welcome to another episode of Being Boss with myself, Jasmine Amini, and I've got a very special guest in my studio this morning. Aisha, thank you so much for joining us. Aisha is the founder of Sweepsouth, and I've been trying to get you on the show for some time. We've kind of been living past each other. You used to be my neighbor, well, I was your neighbor, I don't know. And then since then we've kind of lost touch, so it's nice to have you with us. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's good to be back. It's always nice to see you, but it's also good to be in the building again and have a look around the hood.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice. So Aisha, for those who have not been following your journey, because you have had quite a lot of media exposure, tell us a little bit about Sweepsouth, your idea behind it, how it came about.
So Sweepsouth is the easiest way to describe it is it's an online platform that consists of a website, a web app, and a mobile app, and it connects homeowners who are looking for home cleaning services, or in fact anyone who's looking for cleaning services, with domestic workers who we call sweep stars, who can perform the cleaning, and it does it in a very quick, convenient, hassle-free way. We've designed the app initially to work very similar to Uber, so it's around convenience and completing the process of getting someone very quickly. It was founded about 2.5 years ago by myself and my co-founder, who's my husband as well. And we started the business because we were looking for something, we were looking for someone to help us with home cleaning back in December 2013. And we struggled to find someone firstly quickly on the day that we wanted. But also through the process of looking for someone to help us, we also realized that through our search, we went through agencies, and we realized that people in this industry were being treated very badly. The industry itself, so domestic services in South Africa, hasn't really had the benefit of the influence of technology at all, and that a lot of attitudes towards domestic work in South Africa are what we call pre-1994. So haven't really changed much. And so what we wanted to do was build a platform that uses technology to provide people with work opportunities, but which does so at decent rates that where we set a floor, and where people have the benefit of flexibility, so they decide when and where they want to work, who they want to work for. There's a dual rating system, so people rate clients as well as clients rating them. And so really just, I suppose, having a better experience for both sides of the platform.
Fantastic. And so 2.5 years is not that long.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the journey been like?
It's been crazy. It feels like it's bizarre because it feels like it's been really long, and it also feels like it's just gone by, literally in seconds. So it's been tough. Building a business is really, really tough, and we're dealing with a marketplace business that isn't easy to build. But in terms of Sweepsouth and performance-wise, it's done really well. I think it's surpassed almost what we thought. We had this concept and we wanted to build something, and we certainly had ideas long term about what it would become. But in terms of growth and uptake and our experience, it's definitely surpassed our expectations.
Fantastic stuff. So one of the questions that I've had around Sweepsouth for a while is if it's a platform that allows any nationality, or is it only South African?
Any nationality, but you need to obviously legally be able to work in the country. But it's not. I mean, it's certainly not just for South African nationals, and that's also been interesting. So the industry that we work in is one that's also subject to people are subject to a lot of xenophobia. There are obviously the xenophobic attacks which took place recently in Pretoria, and it's difficult. It's difficult, but we certainly. The ethos behind the company that we founded is that we don't discriminate on any basis at all. And so for us, as long as you have experience and you satisfy the basic criteria that we put forward, you're welcome to work on our platform.
And so you spoke about having a social aspect as something that was very crucial to whatever business endeavor you were going into.
Yeah.
And you speak about the notion of pre-94.
Yeah.
Have you encountered any bizarre pre-94 behavior in the business that you've had to kind of nip in the bud, and how did you do that?
Yeah. I think it's almost a given. We knew that would happen, so we certainly have. We're dealing with customers, with homeowners, with ordinary people, And we've certainly had requests for particular nationality of cleaners, and you know what I find kind of bizarre rationale behind why you wouldn't want someone who comes from a particular country, which to me is just bizarre to paint an entire nationality or group, you know, with one brush. And the way that we've dealt with that is to state very clearly what our again, what our ethos is, what what the company believes, what our mission is, and then if people aren't in line, we have to refuse business. We don't. We can't subscribe to that sort of thing if it's against our beliefs. And we're a marketplace, which means that we're serving two sides of the market. It's not just about customers. To be able to function efficiently, our sweep stars have to be happy as well. And so that means when there's the potential for someone who's going to be discriminatory, we have to protect our sweep stars against that as well.
Absolutely, I like that. So a little more light-hearted question: what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a marine biologist, bizarrely.
Okay.
I think, I don't know, I must have seen something on TV, maybe something like mermaids or I don't know, and wanted to do something that was in the sea. But once I thought a bit more about it, I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I grew up in a family of activists and a lot of lawyers. My mom has 6 siblings, and I think 3 or 4 of them are lawyers.
Wow.
I was set actually on becoming a lawyer until a few days before I had to decide between what I was going to study at university, and I ended up becoming a scientist. But yeah, I was this close to lawyer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And we've spoken a lot on Being Boss around the idea of an entrepreneur, and you know, if it's something you can learn, as in going to business school, or if it's something that you're just born with, it's in your gut. What do you believe?
You know, I think there's this kind of like cloud of mystery around entrepreneurship sometimes, and being an entrepreneur to me is just it's having an idea and starting a venture based around that idea and hopefully doing it successfully. And so there are different types of entrepreneurs. There's, you have entrepreneurs who are the creative and the visionary type. You have entrepreneurs who are and I consider myself this kind of entrepreneur, who are more the execution and, it's about the mechanics and fixing things. So I certainly don't think that there's only one type of person who becomes an entrepreneur or who's right for being an entrepreneur. But that said, I think that there are things that are in the way that either just you are or in your upbringing that certainly help with the decision to become an entrepreneur, or help you with an entrepreneurial journey if you choose that. Not accepting the status quo. Being an entrepreneur means that you are going to do things that are against the norm.
Sure.
And being the kind of person who's okay with that and who's okay with saying no, and still going ahead with things, I think helps a lot.
Cool. And those qualities you think you kind of have in you, or you're raised with them?
I was certainly, so I think some of those things I have within me just naturally. So me wanting to be a lawyer and actually being a scientist, the kind of the similarities there and why they were appealing were just the question around having a very inquiring mind and not just accepting things as is.
Yeah.
I was one of those annoying kids who always asks why. Like every answer to a question is met with a why. And then I think certainly being brought up like that as well. So I was brought up in an environment where my parents were challenging a very big system, throughout most of my childhood. And so I was brought up respecting authority in the sense of my family, but not necessarily being brought up with this notion that because things are that way, that means that they're right.
So another thing that we hear come up a lot, and entrepreneurs are always desperate for, is around funding. How do I find an investor? Do I need one?
Yeah.
And I know we sat on a panel a while back where we came from kind of very opposing sides, because I chose to bootstrap, and I know you've done quite a bit of fundraising.
Yeah.
So for those who are wanting to find out about that process, how did you go through yours?
So, I think the first thing to say is that I don't necessarily think that every new business should get funding. I think getting funding and needing funding should be a very conscious decision that you make with your eyes wide open. I think as with a co-founder, investors in your business will become involved, whether you like it or not. You know, they're vested in it. And so I don't necessarily think it's a given that entrepreneurs or founders should take on funding. But if you run a business like ours, where you know, the aim, especially upfront, is to grow and to grow very quickly, and you require funding to be able to do that, then you know, then that's a conscious decision you make. And for us, how we came across our first investors was that we went and pitched at a competition. Not necessarily with the aim of getting funding. We actually were living in Joburg, wanted to come and pitch at a conference here in Cape Town, and thought that we'd potentially get some new Cape Town clients out of it when we launched in Cape Town. And Vinnie Lingham, who was on the panel of judges for that pitching competition, became an investor in the company. The timing was actually right because we were running out of money. We bootstrapped our business for a year to that point. But yeah, you know, we made the decision that we were profitable pretty much at that stage, but you know, we could carry on and grow quite slowly, or we could really try and achieve explosive growth and take on funding, which is what we did.
So what would your advice be to other entrepreneurs who are looking for funding? Obviously competitions and platforms, you know, like your Shark Tanks those types of platforms aren't available every day.
Yeah.
So what kind of process would you advise somebody to follow?
So I would say firstly make the decision about whether you need it very early on. In fact, before you start your business, I think you need to know whether this is a business that can be bootstrapped until it's profitable, that requires funding. Then to identify potential funders, I think you need to look at who will be a match and who's a mismatch, and then start to try and cultivate those relationships as early on as possible. And then look out for opportunities to get in touch with investors. You know, again, as early as possible. I think it's a lot easier to come across an investor by mistake and impress them than it is to have the first interaction be, "Hi, my name's so and so. This is my business, and I need some funding." And then the other thing would be to also just be realistic upfront and try and take as little as you need initially.
Sure.
And just be conservative, because if you require funding, it's likely that you'll require funding again further down the line. And asking for too much upfront, which I've seen a lot of new entrepreneurs do, is firstly damaging to your business, because you dilute and you give away equity early on. But the other thing is also that you come across with quite a new business often, asking for a lot of money, and there's a mismatch in terms of what your investor wants to give away and sees as realistic and you know, what you think the business needs.
Would you agree that the notion of getting investors on board, or this idea of the VC space, has in a sense become quite glorified, and it seems, you know, people tend to celebrate winning funding as if it's a jackpot.
Absolutely.
Without thinking about what the downsides are. So what are the downsides?
So I mean, the downsides are, so I spoke about this. I was speaking at a conference last week, and I spoke about this, that funding in itself shouldn't be celebrated as a milestone within a business in the same way that actual business-related milestones should be. And I think the trouble is where the funding becomes the announcement and the big deal. So I think some of the downsides around funding are bringing on other stakeholders who aren't necessarily involved in the day-to-day of the business, and investors, just by nature of what they do, and this is not wrong, have a different aim and a different outcome, you know, best case outcome than the founders. So you know, for investors it's to make a return from the business, and that's what it's about. Whereas for founders, you know, you may have different prospects for the business, you may have a different long-term goal, you may have different exit goals. So I think the downside there is bringing people on who potentially have a different idea about what the end goal is for the business. I think another, I don't know.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so if we start getting a little bit personal now and talk about what it's like working, because you mentioned that your co-founder is your husband. What's that like?
It's fantastic. Firstly, I mean, we're best friends as well as co-founders, and obviously a married couple. So it's great. We love we love working together. We're at the end of a day where we spent the whole day together, we still want to spend, what's left of the day together. So that's fantastic. And I think that almost is like a double-edged sword, because at the same time it means it can be really difficult to break away from the business. I think we struggle to jointly find work-life balance. And we're both absolutely obsessed with our business, of course, and which means that we talk about it all of the time. So it's great in the sense that we're able to talk about it all the time, and there's someone to bounce things off at, who doesn't get tired of doing it, but it can be tough. It's tough to switch off.
So often as entrepreneurs we get asked the question around work-life balance, and you've already kind of answered that, saying that you're finding it tough to find that. I've started being of the opinion that maybe the pressure of finding that balance is also unnecessary, and maybe it's okay to not have balance. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's okay to not have balance. I think thinking that you're going to achieve this state where things are in harmony is dangerous, and is probably just lying to yourself. But I do think, and I've had personal experience with this, where you need to constantly be asking that question, and I think it's healthy that we discuss that and talk about that, because you can get very caught up in things. I recently had a baby, so I had a 4-month-old.
Don't look like it at all.
And I was in hospital in labor with my laptop open, working on the computer. And a few hours after she was born, I opened up my laptop again, and I don't think that's healthy. And I think the fact that we question that sort of thing is good, because it's not just a given that that's okay. But yeah, so that's it. I don't think that work-life balance and a happy balance where everyone is satisfied and kids love you, husband loves you, business loves you is achievable. I think things will always sway either way. But I think it's healthy to ask yourself and to challenge yourself on whether you're being healthy in terms of that balance.
And so, tough one for you guys, because you're both co-founders in this business. And maybe this is something that you can't answer, but certainly a lot of entrepreneurs who are married to entrepreneurs will often speak about how somehow still, because of this idea of roles, the woman's business is always slightly less important than the husband's business. How does that impact with you guys?
I think it's a sensitive one, because there are other factors that play into it, right? So there's, traditionally, how have you been brought up, culturally, how have you been brought up, and how does that influence what happens at home? I think for us, in our company, I'm the CEO, Alan's the CTO. So a lot of business decisions rest on me. And so in terms of kind of who then takes more of the family stuff, I would probably say the CTO, the one who doesn't have kind of that load of responsibility. But culturally, I'm a mom, and I've been brought up where I have a mom who worked really hard, and who still works really hard, but still was the mom at home, and very nurturing and all that sort of stuff. So it's tough. It's not an easy one, and I think it depends on what's decided between the two. My experience and my learning through all of this is just not to be judgmental, and whatever works for you works for you.
Do you have any kind of secrets to having a successful day, or any weird rituals that put you forward from a success perspective?
A big thing for me is that there's a lot of noise during working hours, and so I've learned to be realistic with myself about what can be achieved during normal working hours. And my kind of secret that I've learned is to be very kind of active and on the ball before the normal workday starts and after the normal workday starts. And I've just found that I can be very productive during those hours. Another thing for me is so I use Noisely. It's basically a white noise generator, and so for me that's really it's really helpful. Just in terms of working in an office where it's an open plan office, people are talking. It's just great at cancelling out the noise and helping you to focus. And then having periods where we use Slack, for example, within our team, and there's a lot of messaging coming through all of the time. You know, team members want to talk to you. Periods where you just shut down email, shut off Slack, and set time in your calendar where, you know, your team sees that as meeting time, and it's actually just time where you've set aside for yourself to be productive and work on, you know, whatever's important to you.
I like that. So then we kind of spoke about this briefly before when we spoke about roles, but I want to bring it up again. Like I mentioned to you, I wrote an article the other day around sexual harassment as a female founder, and that at length articles articles have been written around sexual harassment in the workplace, and, you know, if you're a victim of this, and the picture that's painted is, you know, the CEO calling his PA into the office and just being like gross and, you know, in your space, etc. And that the steps that you would follow to remedy that would be, you know, an HR process, etc. Sure, you might lose your job, but as a entrepreneur, you might lose business. Do you or have you found sexism in as a female founder, and then also, you know, those gross sexual harassment situations, and how have you dealt with them?
So, I mean, I've definitely encountered sexism. I think it's been less overt probably than what, you know, what I've heard from a lot of my peers. But, you know, there are things like, so we had someone in our office the other day to fix our aircon, and he literally couldn't address me. He spoke to, I asked him a question, he'd answer the question to my ops manager, which we both found absolutely bizarre, quite hilarious.
I've encountered that too.
You know, and I've been at conferences where, you know, I'm wearing the Sweepsouth T-shirt, and they know that Sweepsouth is coming to speak, and they'll address either my co-founder or, you know, one of our investors or the male who I'm with, and talk about the business, not realizing that I'm actually the CEO of the business. So, you know, I've had those experiences, and I haven't sat across someone business, you know, in a business setting where I've experienced sexism. And I think in that case, it probably hasn't happened because I've been in a position where I've felt powerful, and I think that's a big part of the reaction to that sort of thing. So, you know, even when it comes to having to accept something like that, and what that means in terms of business and jeopardizing business, I think, again, I don't want to be prescriptive because it's not an easy situation to be in, but I think the quicker you can shut something like that down, and by your nature, I don't stand for that sort of thing, and I shut it down very quickly. You know, if it comes up in a conversation, I don't smile, I don't laugh, it's not something that's funny, I'm not entertaining it. Shut it down and let's move on. But not everyone is in a position where they feel that and they feel empowered enough to do that. And I think then my only kind of advice would be don't go into business, don't accept business, because that isn't something that's going to change. You're not going to suddenly get into a business relationship with someone and then the next day it's okay. So I think it's difficult to say, and if you do need to do it, then just be realistic about what you're getting into, and but yeah, it's a tough one. It's a really, really tough one.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't know, you know, just sure we need to talk about it more.
Yeah.
There's no real end in sight, you know, on discriminative behaviour in many different forms. It is what it is. So I guess what you're saying is it's about how you choose to react. Yeah,
and I think to just realize, you know, very quickly what's happening and what the implications are. So, like, you know, I'm potentially going into business with someone who's sexist. What do I then need to do to try and curb that behavior? What can I do? What's within my power? If you still need to do business with this person, then how do I try and set boundaries? Can I bring someone else into the meeting with me who's going to help me shut it down? It's something that's been talked about on the global stage. I mean, Uber's just faced, you know, the same sort of thing. So it's a very relevant conversation. It's not one that's easy to tackle.
Sure. So just in ending off, Aisha, what would you say inspires you? What gets you up and ready every day to do it all over again?
I think the vision of what we're trying to create inspires me. The difference that we're trying to make in an industry, in a country, on a continent, in the world, inspires me. I'm inspired by the people who we work with, so both our team members in our office and Sweepstars on our platform, and what working with this company and this company's growth has meant to them. I'm also inspired by people around me in my personal life as well. So my mom is someone who's hugely inspirational to me. She's someone who, as I said earlier, she's a fantastic mom. She's brought up children, 4 kids who are very close to each other and have so much respect for her. But she's also someone who's been impactful on a national and international level. And that sort of thing inspires me because it's something that I aspire to. And then I come across amazing people, and this is what I love about being an entrepreneur and working in tech and having a business that we're growing, is that you come across other people in the same space who just have learned so much and who have so much to give in terms of like the knowledge and sharing what they've learned. And I find that hugely inspirational as well. It says a lot about where entrepreneurship and tech is going.
Sure.
I'm inspired by kind of the future and the vision for what that can be, the potential there.
I literally feel like we need a whole another 20 minutes because I've got so many more questions for you. We're going to have to get you back for round 2 because that does bring us to the end of our time. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Being Boss, and be sure to come in and stay tuned next week for more. Bye for now.